Good afternoon. This is the LouRaePodcast. I'm your host, Austin Kors, and today my guest is Isabella. She's an artist here in Louisville, Kentucky, and we're so happy to have her on the podcast. Isabella, thank you so much for coming in.
Of course, thanks for having me.
So, a little bit of background first. You didn't actually grow up in Louisville, did you? You grew up over across the river?
Yeah. In a log cabin in the middle of the woods in southern Indiana.
So, pretty naturalist background, huh?
Yeah.
What was it like growing up around a lot of nature and not a lot of people?
It was nice. Thankfully, I actually there was kind of a contrast with it because my mom grew up in Vegas. So we went to Vegas to visit my mom's side of the family, only once a year, but I lived in the woods around no one, and then I had that one trip every year where I went to be in a big city. So it was kind of cool to see that it was out there. It was different being in the woods. It had its ups and downs, but I did have my brothers, and I'm glad I had that time to just be disconnected and run around and play in the woods and figure things out. My mom didn't have the technical aspect of being an artist. She didn't have the genetic side of it, but she was just a little bit crazy. So all the colors around the house definitely, I think, had an influence as well.
Was your whole house painted?
Yeah, my mom, she found bright orange, not marble, bright orange countertops. I don't know how, I didn't even know they made those, but...
I've never seen one.
And then a cobalt blue sink.
Wow.
Yeah. And a log cabin in the middle of the woods. It was very random.
But your dad was more artistic in another way?
Yeah, just the technical side. So he's more of an engineer, and so, I've always been, my favorite subject in school was math. So I've always kind of had the more technical aspect to it. I think that's why I focus more on the realism part, because it's like a puzzle to me, like getting everything exactly where it's supposed to be. But my mom was just, she wanted the kitchen table to be white with purple flowers all over it. So the whole entire thing was covered in just this even pattern of purple flowers, and my dad said it looked like somebody threw up all over it, which is not true, but that was the difference in their personalities, definitely.
Wow, that must have been a really interesting combination to grow up around. You have this kind of really technical, maybe pragmatic even mindset from your father, and then this really free spirit from your mother.
Yeah.
And it almost shows in your art when you have these oil paintings that look so lifelike, but they also have this real great playfulness in the surrealism that you touch on in some of your pieces. It's an interesting combination, and I guess maybe there's a bit of inspiration from your childhood in that.
Yeah, that's cool. I've actually never thought about that. I think I have thought about the aspect of my mom being from Vegas and my dad being from the woods, though. That's definitely wild. That's two totally different personalities in that way, too.
Yeah, that's quite crazy, because Vegas is this, den of citizens who just kind of do whatever they want. They don't really have a lot of rules there. It's known as a place of real freedom and a Wild West, if you will. Yeah. And then
Yep.
the kind of, and I'm imagining your dad is a pretty quiet Midwestern woodsman, dedicated to his work and dedicated to the ideals that he's always grown up around and maybe had. Yeah, what a combination of characters.
Yeah, real serious, quiet military guy, and then crazy Spanish teacher, free spirit, city girl.
Do you find that nature influences a lot of what you do?
I think it does. I forget about it sometimes, but I do notice, because I am mostly an extrovert, I'll get caught up in the scene and be excited and going, and then I'll start to get really anxious and can't figure out why. And then I realize as soon as I actually go out there and decompress, it's reset. So I think because I grew up in nature, I understand the importance of it. And I listen to a lot of podcasts too, and always hear how important it is to spend some time outside and not get too caught up. So I think that helped me.
Yeah, it's a good balance to strike between surrounding yourself with people and surrounding yourself in nature and finding yourself in nature in that way. I remember you telling me you did some sculpting as well, but you focused on like Play-Doh, right?
Yeah, well, I started with Play-Doh just because that's what I had. And so that was when I sculpted my dad's face, and my parents were just so shocked that's when they started giving me other things. So I did sculpt things in the mud and all that too. But yeah, it started with Play-Doh.
Yeah, and it only kept going from there.
Yeah.
But you had a really pretty accepting and nice community around you that built you up and made you pretty confident in your art, right?
Yeah, later on, definitely. Starting out, it was really just my parents, and then my mom was kind of like my cheerleader, so she would be, every time we had family events and stuff, she'd be putting my art out for everyone to see. And then we didn't have neighbor kids or anything like that when I was really little, so my neighbor, I sculpted them a horse one time because they had horses, so sculpted them a horse, and they were really excited about that, so that was supportive.
But you didn't go to college for art, did you?
No.
You went for marketing and advertising?
Yeah.
So you didn't really originally see yourself as an artist, or maybe instead that as a career path.
Right.
So what changed for you?
I think the biggest part of it was I started off at a school where things were very different than regular public school. It was a public school, Montessori. But I started off there, and I used to dress really crazy to school and did not care what anybody thought. And people would ask me, why are you dressed like that? And I'd say, because I can. But whenever I switched and got a little bit older, switched to a public school, I just kind of started to see more of how social norms were in a school like that. So I think part of that was, I think that had an impact just because the art group there, the people who were considered creative and artistic there, I just did not really get along with them. Every art class I had growing up, I thought, oh, I'm going to find friends here that are good at art too. And then we didn't have anything in common other than art. And then another part of it was, I think because a lot of them would say they were artists, and then I would see their work, and I just didn't ever want to be somebody that said I'm an artist. I just didn't want to walk around saying that my art was good, I guess. I prefer to let somebody else decide that. So I think that was part of it, and I just never wanted to be one thing either.
It sounds like you had an idea of what an artist should be, almost like an idea of somebody who puts these incredible compositions on paper and really has a truth to it.
Probably, yeah. I think also because my dad draws, and his stuff was really realistic. To me, it was just, if I saw something, I wanted to make it as realistic as possible, and if it didn't look like what I saw in front of me, then it wasn't good. That's what I thought as a kid. I definitely see things differently now, but as a kid, that's kind of what I thought about that. And then, yeah, I think whenever you're in school and people are so sectioned off into groups, because I didn't see anything in common with them, I didn't want to identify as one of them. So it was like, no, I'm not an artist. I'm not one of those people. And
so you went to college for marketing and advertising, and then I think it was COVID that changed things for you.
Yeah. So since I kind of grew up in Indiana, I didn't know a whole lot of people. In 2020, COVID, everything just slowed down. Obviously, had a lot more time on my hands. Got to branch out a little bit more, and then. Actually, the first thing that brought the art more to the forefront was when Breonna Taylor's memorial was destroyed. So I kind of was putting art off because I felt like it took too much time for what it was worth. While I was in college, I was working full-time, and I was selling paintings on the side just to make extra money, but it didn't seem like something that I would just sit and do because it would take so much time. When somebody asked me to put a painting in that memorial, I did it. I only had 1 hour, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to help out. I want to contribute. So I did it in 1 hour, and I was like, hey, this is okay. I kind of like it. It was more vibrant. It was more loose. And most importantly, it was something meaningful, and it was really important to those people, and it did help contribute. So that's when I started to kind of have more of an open mind about experimenting with it and just branching out a little bit more. And then I was also asked, so a little bit later on, I was asked to do the mural on 4th Street. We were painting boarded up windows. They were when they were boarded up from the protests, we were doing murals on them to brighten up the city. So when I showed up to do that, I actually met an artist I had never met, and this is the first time I met another painter that I had things in common with. So it just kind of showed me more of the possibilities and what else is out there, and it made me want to be in Louisville more and working with him and seeing the outcome of that mural and seeing all the people stop and the impact that it had on them, that was just something that hasn't ever been replaced since that. So it feels like art, it can be a lot more impactful than I thought.
Yeah, it really can be. It can really bring communities together, like in that kind of Breonna Taylor mindset, where you have a loss of somebody innocent and people are trying to fill that space with something beautiful and remind each other of kind of the beauty that was lost in that moment. Moving on past the mural, you started also experimenting with other mediums like body paint, right?
Yeah. So when I did the mural, that was when people in Louisville saw me doing something big and they were like, who's this person? So a lot of photographers reached out to me, set up a photo shoot, and I asked the photographer, can I paint on you? And just push the button. He was like, sure. So I didn't know body paint was a thing, but once I did that and we posted it, people were telling me that it was big in New York and it's a whole thing. So I was asked to do body paint for a clothing brand. It's called Phenotype now in New York City. Once I got past that, I started doing makeup and special effects for short films, and it just kind of escalated from there.
Yeah, so you really got your fingers in all kinds of different outlets of art, from body paint to working with models to working with photography, makeup, painting. How do you kind of keep it all together, or how do you find focus in each kind of medium, or are you just kind of exploring at this point?
Well, I was exploring for a long time, and that was hard because I haven't ever wanted to just be one thing, so I thought I could just do everything. Definitely not the case. But I've leaned more into oil painting because that's just something I feel like I have the most skill in, and I've just found a lot of joy in doing the realism and just really trying to hone in my craft on that. But as far as everything else goes, it's kind of just like if a project comes up and I can help somebody out, I always have a really great time hopping on that and meeting people and just seeing their vision and helping fulfill that. So that's kind of how I balance it, is if it's to help somebody else out, then I'll do it. But as far as trying to build my own business, I kind of focus more on the murals and oil paintings.
Tell me more about the oil paint then. What about it captures you so much, you think?
It's so fun to try different things and be able to kind of surprise myself, I guess. It's just cool to see how much you can do with it. You can make things look really real, but at the same time, I guess that's where my style is going, because you can make things look really, really realistic, but then you still don't know what it is. So that's where it's fun to experiment with realism and surrealism, I guess.
Yeah, you do have an interesting blend of realistic fundamental imagery that almost blends into something else as well, like with your wine glasses. The way that they're stacked together is impossible in real life. You have to kind of challenge what you've been presented with and look at it in a new light. And the way that you use oil paint to show the different lights and colors, and it's almost, it's very challenging to look at in ways, because it makes you constantly think from different angles, from the color theory that you have and also the presentation of what you want to show. So it's nice to be able to have all that in just one medium.
Yeah, it is really fun. That was really well explained.
Thank you. Oh, you also capture the human form a lot in your paintings. You do portraiture, and you also focus on body art as well. Not just body paint, but body art in your oil. What do you think inspires you about the human form that you want to capture it?
I actually think the first time I started to lean more into that, it was because of the challenge of it, because I hear that that's one of the most difficult things to do. And so I think that challenge and trying to get it as realistic as possible with a person, especially because every person is so different, and if you mess up one detail in someone's face, it looks like someone different. So I thought that was so cool to try and capture the uniqueness of somebody's face. But then apart from that, because we are people and we're so connected to people, I just love that challenge of trying to show their emotion through their body as well.
How do you connect with the people who view your art in that way? Because a lot of times when I bring up this question, the artists always tell me that They either create for themselves or they try to create from others. How do you balance what you want to put on the canvas versus what you want other people to see on the canvas?
Well, I think we'll have a lot of answers to that question. Well, because I found so much meaning in painting people that meant something to other people, I do consider that. I did also when I was doing commissions. When I first started doing portraits for people, it was people I didn't know, or it was things that I just didn't understand or hadn't been around enough to fully absorb it. And I think that's also the advertising in me, is wanting to understand all of it so I can share the whole story. So it took kind of a turn. The first self-portrait I did, it was because I was doing so many portraits of other people that I wanted to finally do something for myself. So I did that, and it was just a challenge. But from there, I was just so inspired by the people around me that I wanted to try and share their inspiration through a painting to the viewer. So that was kind of what my goal was for my first show. Most specifically Josie, so the one that's called Polarity now and is in this show. When I first did that, it was because Josie has always had such a deep impact on people, and at Electric Forest, I saw him stare into people's eyes, and they would just start crying and say thank you, because it is that intense, the way he sees people and the way he affects them in that way, makes them feel seen. So I really wanted to try and capture that feeling in the painting, and so that was a real challenge with that. That's kind of how I see it. It's the reason I want to do these things is kind of because I want it to have an impact on people, and that's why I started to pursue art more when I did.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about your first solo show and how you had to kind of compromise between being too personal and being too commercial. And striking a balance between those two things is where a lot of real challenge is. It seems like you're so ingratiated in the community in Louisville. Tell me a bit about it. What is the Louisville art scene like?
It's very supportive. It's very fun. Once you get immersed in it, it feels like it's never ending. So when I first started to meet people, it felt like there were no boundaries. And especially whenever we all went to New York, it was like, oh my gosh, we were actually traveling to New York City. We're traveling to all these places. It just felt like the whole world opened up. So the other part of that actually is part of why I identify as an artist now, because when I was in school and I didn't relate to those people who called themselves artists, they were also the people who were kind of, they didn't put in the work. So I always saw people who would put off their other work so that they could draw pictures. And so I just didn't want to be somebody who was doing less work, I guess. And whenever I got into the Louisville art community, I just realized these are the first people I've met that are working this hard. Like, these are people who are good at art, and they're some of the hardest working people that I know. So we just always kind of encouraged each other, and I have found that it's important to have a balance and be able to step back and focus on your own work too, and then come back out. But once you find that balance, it's really nice. The people in Louisville always show up, and even when you do have to take some time to yourself, as soon as you get back out to one event, it's just a chain reaction. It's just back to back. They're still there.
Yeah, and what's nice about that is once you are kind of out in the community like that, it's so much easier to find support, find other people to work with. If you need dancers, you know dancers. If you need models, you know models.
Yeah.
Things like that. And everybody's willing to put in a little bit of effort because everybody wants to push their creativity in Louisville. They all want to be recognized. They all want to do this because they're all serious about this. Yeah. One thing that I've always heard from the people I've been talking to on this show is whenever I ask, what's your advice for people? They say, be serious and do the artwork. Mm-hmm. Commit yourself to this. If you want to be an artist, you have to really believe in it. Yeah. It's not like a second job. It has to be a priority in your life. Yeah.
Yeah, it is easy to get caught up in the events and the fun of it and then forget to actually sit back and do the work. But that part is the most important part, doing the hard thing, not trying to take the easy way out. My friend actually told me on the phone a couple days ago, he said, what you do behind closed doors is what prepares you most for when they open. And it was just so groundbreaking. I was like, you better write that down.
Yeah, because if you only focus on putting yourself out there and talking to people, then you don't have any of the substance to back yourself up when you do want to present really who you are and what you can create.
Yeah.
You know, that's the foundation of you as an artist, is what you create.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people have the I guess maybe the will to put enough effort into that. And it's also terrifying because you put yourself onto these images, you put yourself out there, and you're really showing your heart and your soul to the people, and having it be critiqued and having it be talked about. It's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Yeah, and as far as that goes, one of the most important things I found is actually finding the things that scare you and doing it. Because that'll really take you places too. People try to stay in their comfort zone, and as an artist, there's a reason why people say artists are crazy. Like, you have to be crazy sometimes. You have to do the hard thing, but you have to do the different thing. You have to get out in front of people and do things that scare you sometimes. And that's actually what an artist just told me the other day too. He was saying, it was an artist I had been wanting to meet for a long time, and he told me, you have to be willing to test your limits and shock people sometimes.
I remember I asked you how you handle critiques, and you said that they were always a learning experience for you.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important because I try to find things to work on. Usually it's if it's something that's uncomfortable. Like, I was terrified to start riding this electric bike, and I did it yesterday. It was really fun. So, but yeah, sometimes whenever you're working really hard in solitude, it's hard to see room for improvement when the only person critiquing it is yourself. So, yeah, sometimes most growth happens from hearing the hard truth.
What do you think Louisville has to do to keep its artists in its city borders? We talked about how a lot of people feel like the ceiling isn't very high in Louisville. Once you hit a certain amount of notoriety here, there's not much to grow towards. A lot of people leave, actually. We've had a couple of my artists that I've interviewed here tell me that they have to leave and then come back home to really make any headway. What, in your opinion, do you think does Louisville need to focus on to support its artists?
I think really, for one, buying the art, funding the art, and then something that I'm trying to do, something I've saw through advertising is the divide between those two communities. And so I was doing advertising for the new hotel that just opened up, and so it was really nice having the art community because we had a photo shoot and we needed models, and I was able to find 15 models who were looking for work and bring them on and do something really creative together. And so it was a really cool opportunity to put those worlds together and be able to help them. But I don't think a lot of the people who go into these other fields think about the art community. I could be wrong, but I think it's just bridging that gap. I think people, if you can't afford the art and you know somebody who can, and you know somebody who does invest in art, connect them with the people who would connect them with the artists. I think that's something that would help when money is kind of a problem. Yeah. Because I do think there's a ceiling in Louisville because of there's not a lot of money here, and the money that is here, it's going towards bourbon, derby, cars, cigars, yeah, just things that aren't art. And when I hear people talk about other cities, they talk about, oh, there's so much art there, it's such a creative city, and that's not Louisville.
Yeah, well, that's why we're working to change that. Yeah. Give people spaces so that it's free entry for everybody to come in, experience art, get to meet the artists that come from here, or the area around here at least, and choose to make their homes here, and then reflect their experiences of this beautiful state and of the people that live here within the artwork that they create. That's important, and it needs to be shown. So I definitely agree. Breaking down barriers between people who might not normally interact with each other is very important for raising a city and raising awareness of who really, has value and worth in an artistic kind of light.
And that's partly on the artist too, because I'll say that's definitely advice I'd give to an artist too, is that's part of the scary things you have to do, is go and meet these people yourself.
What do you think you've learned in the last few years as an artist now that has really helped you kind of do those things, really get your name out there and find success in the artistic world?
In my first solo show, the biggest lesson I learned from that, I think, was that my friends are not my target audience. So that was part of it. I need to definitely I had to work on my professionalism and that aspect, and realize that there are standards that more serious people in the art world are looking for. And at my first solo show, it was a lot of friends. It was a really great turnout, but there was a DJ, there was dancing, there was alcohol. One of my paintings got smeared across the wall. Another one got knocked off of the wall. Yeah, so that's a big thing I learned, is like, okay, the creative community is really great for helping you get out there more and being very supportive and making you feel welcome and like it's okay to be yourself and be an artist, but they are not your target audience, and you have to also work yourself on the professional aspect and making sure that you're meeting certain standards and things like that. So yeah, I think just balancing professionalism with your social life, I think that's the biggest thing I've been still learning as an artist, is considering it a business. And that's part of why school is important too, is understanding that aspect of it. It is a business and you have to take it seriously. My intent was to impact the viewer, but I got some constructive criticism, which benefited me, and that was one of my friends saying, I was going to buy this painting, but then I read that it was your dad's house, and I was thinking, oh, well, I don't want to hang your dad's house in my house. That seems weird. So, like, that was one aspect where I had to kind of keep that in mind whenever I'm doing my future paintings. That's where I kind of shifted a little bit from doing paintings of specific people that the community know, because it's like nobody's going to go buy a picture of them. Just like with self-portraits, I don't expect anyone to want a huge painting of me in their house either. So it's just considering that it is art that still is on display and goes in someone's house. So that was definitely part of it.
That's something that I ran into, is the wall between being too personal and commercial. Like, thinking of how to portray yourself in a way that everybody can see the innate humanity in it. Not so much the Isabel in it, but the humanity of Isabel, with the way that you twist the form being unique to you. Mm-hmm. That's what's interesting. I think that's what's at the heart of all art, is like the shared humanity we all have, the soulfulness of us, and the interest of the art is how the artist shapes that shared understanding into something unique and personal that we can all relate to.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, that's a really important part of it, especially with AI and the way technology is advancing so much. And it was cool using AI for painting when it was first a thing, because it was new, it was interesting. I had to push my limits taking inspiration from that. But now I'm seeing how important it is that we do tap into that humanity aspect of it, because that's the realness of us. If technology takes over everything, then we're missing the most valuable part of life, which is living and being human and spending that together. So that's a little bit of what my show means to polarity, being the opposing sides. It's kind of I tried to symbolize that a little bit with the way that technology is helping. It does help, but at the same time, there's so much tension between that and humanity, because it is taking away so much of our opportunity to just live.
Yeah, no, it's a little terrifying, like the way you said it. We're separating ourselves from our own humanity by relying on these AI-generated arts to kind of inspire us, or make us feel like we have connections to something that doesn't really exist, in technology like that. It's just so formless. Mm-hmm. How do you have a connection to something so vast and general like that? You really can't.
Right. Yeah, it needs the human aspect of it. Like with AI, you have to be able to add in other elements or find a way to at least bring in the humanity if you're going to use it. It's definitely a tool that we should use because work smarter, not harder. It's something that gives us more time to do these other things. But yeah, with social media, I mean, with everything there are ups and downs, but it is a hard balance. It causes a lot of mental health issues and things like that. So it's definitely something to consider.
It's hard enough getting people interested in art when they haven't had a real background in it or haven't known a lot of people in that kind of world. If they're exposed to AI art and they don't feel that connection, I mean, the gap is only widened, and it makes it even harder to form an interest in those kinds of things. It's a dangerous thing to play with. But like you said, many benefits.
It can still make some beautiful art. I mean, it can make a good reference photo, but a person painting it in real life, even that, at least it's painted by a real human being.
And that's really all it should be for, is just to challenge yourself and see what you can play with, and give you ideas and give you prompts, things like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's great for that.
Sure.
But when people look for substance, they'll be lacking, truly. Yeah. Do you have any ambitions for the future? Anything you're working on right now?
Right now, yes. A few things. Yeah, a lot of them are not refined enough yet for me to talk about, but yeah, I have a few ideas, and I'm working towards building up my home gallery. So I have like half of my apartment is my workspace and half of it is my living space. So the workspace part of it, I'm working on setting that up so that I can have little events and things like that there, and people can come and see the process. So that will come out eventually, so you'll see that on my social media.
Nice. And speaking of social media, what is your social media?
It's Isabella Corine, so Isabella_Corine_ on pretty much everything.
Yeah. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook?
Yep.
Nice. And you have a website too, don't you?
Yeah, IsabellaCorine.com.
There you go. Well, Isabella, thank you so much for coming on. We'd love to hear from local artists and people pushing themselves and challenging themselves in the medium itself to kind of show who they are and what they can bring to not only Louisville, but to the art world in general. So thank you so much.
Thank you.